Welcome back to the People of the Free Gift podcast here on YouTube. And we are doing a live stream here. And if you want to know more about the Manson family, and particularly I'm working with an article that came from Time Life magazine, Killer Cults, and you can see who's on the cover. So we're going to be dealing quite a bit with Manson as well as some other key prominent cult leaders over the next few weeks. And so for those of you who are newcomers, right down here, you're going to see a watermark where you can subscribe to the channel at any time. Up here, you're going to see cards that are going to point to other videos, and you'll also see end screens for the replay, as well as in the descriptions down below. Also in the descriptions, you can find other links to other, like this magazine, an Audible free trial, and many other things. And so if you, all of those things help us out and support the channel when you click on that and do some shopping of your own. So thank you so much for the support. And of course, give me that thumbs up. And in the comments over on the side, and go ahead and leave your comments as I go through this material. And I'm going to be interacting with you guys as you're on there and you get on there. So welcome. And so I'm not going to read the entire article to you. I've already done that for you. And I'm going to just hit some highlighted areas that I thought were personally interesting, as well as things that I might be able to kind of interact with thoughts and commentary of my own. And so in October 1969, Charlie Manson was the very encapsulation of truth about revolt and violence by the young. So in other words, basically, every fear that people had, that the society and culture that they had grown up with and endured was going away. That was confirmed as Charlie Manson and his Manson family came on the scene and committed these heinous murders. What failure of the human condition could produce a Charlie Manson? Now, the interesting thing is, if you're coming at this from a Christian viewpoint, you would say sin. And the reality is that every single one of us are actually capable of doing exactly what Charles Manson did, except that a lot of us, by the grace of God, don't. And a lot of us, by the grace of God, don't give in to our temptations and our sinful nature in the same way. We all do in other ways. And so that would be our answer, just to put it simple. But there's something in us that has a burning curiosity when something so heinous or cult-like happens. How did that happen? How do people join up with a Charlie Manson? And so let's get into this a little bit more. He attracted and controlled his women through flattery, fear, and sexual attention, and by loftily granting them a sort of sisterhood of exploitation, methods used by every pimp in history. And I thought that was kind of interesting. You know, pimps have their own version of mind control abuse that they have on the women that work for them. He sent something old as a tribal blood ritual, which would most of us deny in ourselves, that humans can feel enormous fulfillment and enormous relief in the act of killing other humans if some medicine man applauds and condones the deed. That's really sick and twisted, but you know, there is something in us that's always longing for pleasure, longing for satisfaction, longing for endorsement and encouragement, and to feel like we're doing the right thing. And if there's a figure that's a strong authoritarian figure, a very charismatic leader that comes along and tells you this is the right thing to do and convinces you of that, then you are capable of doing just that. And that a lot of the anger and hostility and frustration that's bent up in us, if it's actually unleashed in that kind of way, there may be something that's very true, that there's something that's released within human nature that would find some sort of satisfaction in that. So he exploited that level as well. But Charlie was able to attune his time-encrusted concepts of villainy to the childish yearnings of his hippie converts, to their weaknesses, their catchwords, their fragmentary sense of religion, and their enchantment with drugs and idleness, and to immerse them in his own ego and idiotic versions of the apocalypse. That was a little slam at the end, the idiotic versions of apocalypse. And, hey, if we feel like genuinely, hey, it's the end of the world as we know it, and we're not feeling fine, then we're open to the suggestion that, hey, there might be something you can do to change that. And so he brought in purpose along with that. So going back to his childhood, he was born to a teenage prostitute in Cincinnati on November 12, 1934. His mother farmed him out to homes and schools until he was taken as a delinquent at 14 to the last and most permanent of them, the Indiana Boys School. He ran, as juvenile authorities term escape, repeatedly and stole cars and committed burglaries during his periods of freedom. And so this shows like he had a kind of a messed up childhood in which he never really felt attachment, felt accepted, and that led into a life of crime. And then going on, he had never gone farther than the 7th grade. Now he read the Bible and tracts on the quasi-religion Scientology. So anybody who checks out Scientology is messed up, right? Well, okay. And so he decided that the book of Revelation had predicted the Beatles. So reason to read Revelation, right? Because, John, Paul, George, and Ringo are in those pages. I promise it. He learned to play the guitar and assumed he could compose music. Charlie billed himself as a roving minstrel, come to fulfill their dreams with magic, strike off the chains of male chauvinism, and lead them to the promised land, although in fact he regarded them as squaws, treated them like cattle, and excommunicated those who complained. And so right there, classic mind control, cult leader type of stuff going on here. Most of Charlie's girls, in the opinion of a San Francisco psychiatrist who encountered them, were hysterics, wishful thinkers, seekers after some absolute, who came to regard Charles as a high priest, all-powerful, all-knowing. Anytime you put your trust in humans in that way, that's going to happen. It's going to let you down. Charlie was a fast talker with a glittering eye. He initiated new girls by taking them to bed for day-long sexual marathons. He broke down their inhibitions by directing them in erotic group carnivals or ordering them to carnal activity with other men and commanding them to do so in the same tones in which he sent them into the streets to panhandle. So, but it goes on to talk about how Charlie was offended by the label hippie. He was not a hippie. He was an entrepreneur. He was a creative, whatever you wanted to call him. He was a leader. Charlie preached a confused but vehement philosophy. Everything in the world belonged to all of its people. So he must have liked John Lennon, right? Particularly in the Beatles. Imagine. Okay. Everything in the world belonged to all its people. Thus, there could be redivision of valuables, but no theft. Convenient, right? Especially if what you think somebody else has, they should share with you. Then there's no theft. You just take it, and that's them sharing with you. All humans were part of some homogeneous and mystic whole. Thus, there could be no real death. And the boys got girls as gifts from Charlie. Charlie had any girl he wanted, of course, because we're all sharing, right? Except that I get what I want, and you don't always get what you want. Manson's word was law. He carried and fondled a Bowie knife as his scepter. He also collected guns and ammunition. The family, he prophesied, was one day going into Los Angeles to set off the apocalypse, foreordained for them in Revelation chapter 9. So not only are the Beatles in Revelation, they were in Revelation. Okay? Chapter 9, to be specific, when it says they were given the power of scorpions, the noise of their wings was like the noise of many chariots, and they have the kin over them, the angel of the bottomless pit. I wonder if Charles Manson thought he was the angel of the bottomless pit. That's pretty scary stuff right there. I'll let you argue about that in the comments down below. Okay, Charlie Manson talked about it to visitors. He was going to shoot all the white people he saw, all the established people. Then the black people would get enthralled and destroy everybody while he would retreat into the desert. So where they were let down was when they started the havoc. The black people weren't as enthusiastic about it as they had hoped and in joining in. And so they were left to suffer the consequences all on their own. The apocalypse didn't start. Revelation 9 wasn't fulfilled, and they just all went to jail. Okay? The girls, many of whom were later released, did not lose faith in Charlie. They demanded that their jailer supply them with peanut butter and honey for a purification ceremony and insisted on going naked. Forced to wear dresses, they took to raising them over their heads when exercising outside. And so there you have it. It's like even after the deed's done, after the whole thing goes down, after they're imprisoned, they still did not lose their faith in Charles Manson. And that is a really sad and scary thing. That's true of pretty much most cult leaders. I mean, Warren Jeffs, who's leader of the FLDS down in Colorado City, he's in prison, but he's leading the group via prison. How many of these guys have been punished, have been killed, and yet their followers, they still follow them. And so I'd love to hear what you guys think about this. What is it in the human nature, as their question asks, that could cause such a thing as Charles Manson and the Manson family? And in another, next week, probably on Wednesday, I'm going to jump back into this. The next article that deals with kind of the murder scenes and some of the things that I found in those articles. And so be sure to subscribe. Like I said, subscribe right down here. And also the other videos, check those out in the affiliate links down in the description below. And then until next time, and I got a comment, and it says, that sharing concept is communism. It's interesting to me that communism always seems to end in mass murder. Stalin, Mao, Pol Pot, pretty much all of them. And just so you know, I've talked about this before, but the mind control tactics, how they discovered those is by actually studying the totalitarian governments and their structure and their system. And so you could ask the same question, how could people follow Hitler or Stalin or any of the guys that were just mentioned? Thank you, Timothy, for the insight. And so then what happened is they started studying these governments, and then people within these other groups that were coming out started saying, hey, wait a minute, these same things are happen within our group. And so they started turning the lens onto the cults and finding that they used, in fact, the same mind control techniques to create their victims and to abuse their victims as well. And so after a person comes out of that whole thing, then it really creates a very disturbed mess. A lot of them become atheists and agnostics, turning their religion in itself is flawed. Jesus in itself is flawed. And that's the sad part, is that God often goes with the cult leaders and with the organization. And and without any other comments, until next time, may his spirit be with you.